Do you like to travel? Or camping, at least? I used to go camping a lot when I was single, and Mom, I'm going out this time a week, or sometimes 2 weeks. I love camping. Do you know why people like traveling? Is there anyone who doesn't like travel at all? No, I assume that every one of you, right, you love traveling. Okay. Do you know why people love to travel or visit some new places, try out some new restaurants? Because in a single day, you can experience a lot. You just encounter a lot of people. In your normal day routine cycle, you're almost all the same, right? But when you are in a certain place, you get to meet a lot of people. That's why, wow, I experienced this one, I experienced that. So you take a lot of pictures. Sometimes you make new friends there. Past 10 years or so, probably the most famous Korean guy in Korea is not the newly elected president, Moon Jae-in, or Jae-in, Moon, I don't know, but okay. His name is, wait a sec, I forgot his last name. Moon Nam-young. Okay. Do you know what he's famous for? Probably some of you are like, huh, 목사님, what was that? Yeah, Moon Nam-young. He's not kind of normal guy. He's like late 30s, but he's famous for non-motorized desert crossing exploring. It's a crazy thing. Somehow, about 10 years ago, he made up his mind and said, I'd like to cross over 10 largest deserts in the world to encourage the people, especially who are handicapped. Even though we are so handicapped and so limited, we human beings can do. So he started out like about 8 years ago. So far, until 2016, starting from 2006, 10 years, he had crossed over 8 mega, supersized deserts on bicycles, sometimes on his own foot. Amazing. After he crossed over the 8th largest, the deserts, he wrote a book, and it's bestseller right now in Korea. First chapter, he said, wow, life changes all the time. Even if I plan so in detail for tomorrow, but the day that I wake up, I got to change my plan in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Even before I go to bed, I got to change my plans. Why? Because I'm in no place, no zone, right? Not familiar with this. Imagine, desert. When the storm comes up, the whole terrain shapes change the very next day. Even if you plan so well, the next day when you get up, oh, the hill that was over here is yonder. You know why? Because it's desert. If one single life is full of changes and surprises, then how much more that you and I experience, especially when we live spiritual life. Even in a single life, normal person. But you, struggling with your own issues, struggling with your own self-image and your old image inside, the sinful desire, the old man living inside, the inner man. And what about the challenges and the attacks that the Satan is throwing at you? That's why we do have a lot of challenges. Sometimes we feel like, well, I'll just enjoy whatever. That's a typical response of the postmodernism. Whatever. Why? Because there's nothing like obsolete. Yeah, there's no absolute at all. So everything's like obsolete, changes all the time, it's old. The question is, God has a purpose, every single one of us, when He sends out. We have a purpose here. And as we live in faith, we realize, oh, God wants me to do this. Somehow, I'm kind of inclined toward this direction. Maybe God is trying to do something about this field or this area. And you grab it. And you begin to nurture that dream or desire inside of you. Now the question is, when God shows you a vision, when God gives you a dream, how are you going to fulfill that? Come on. We're here in Boston. Every week, almost, we hear college student like jumping off the building or something like that. Because of what? Frustration. They tried hard, but they fail. Now, we Christians, we're not exempted. We're the same. We do face tough time and difficulties. The question is, how am I going to fulfill this God-given vision? Now, take a look at the text today. We will learn a lot from Paul's personal experience. During the second missionary journey, actually, when he was traveling, the southern part of Turkey, he was traveling. So he remembered the churches that he built, established during the first missionary journey. So his original plan is to travel inner cities and inside of, the Turkey, so that he would just plant more churches and encourage all the church members as well. So he traveled the southern part of Turkey, and eventually he thought, maybe it's time to go up north. But guess what? The Spirit of God stopped him. He dreamed of evangelizing the people living yonder, in the inner city, or the continent. But God stopped him. And he was thinking, why, God? Now, you open up the door, so I just obeyed you and followed all these years along, and all of a sudden you stop me? Why? He was frustrated. He was frustrated. Why? He was blocked. The Spirit of God did not allow him to go into that direction, Bithynia. So he prayed. Take a look at verse 10, in case you have the Bible with you. Verse 10. Verse 9. That night, the night that he was frustrated, the night that his dream was halted, that night, Paul had a vision. You see that? Paul had a vision. In that, a man from Macedonia in the northern Greece was standing there, pleading with him, come over to Macedonia and help us. So we decided to leave for Macedonia at once, having concluded that God was calling us to preach the good news there in Macedonia. So that night, the night that he was frustrated, he prayed, and then God gave him, boom, dream, a vision. In that, Macedonian man was waving on the other side of the northern part of Greece to say, come over here, Paul, come over, please help us. Nobody has ever visited the place with the gospel in history. Paul was the first one. So, knowing that God had given him a new vision, he was so excited, so he did not even wave at all. He didn't hesitate at all. He immediately responded. So verse 11, we boarded a boat at Troas. Troas is the northern part of the Turkey, and that's the harbor. So in order to cross over the ocean, they had to go down to the Troas, the harbor. Do you know how to fulfill God-given vision? God-given vision can only be fulfilled when we obey immediately. Please do not linger. You don't need to meditate on the dream that God gave you. When God gives you a direction, you have to move immediately. Don't wait until the next sense. God, is it true? Is it true? Maybe I heard wrong. No. When God somehow gives you a strong conviction, God, is it true? When God assured you, you have to move along. Don't hesitate. Don't wait along. Take a look at verse 10 and 11. Immediately. If you read NIV, you'll see those adverbs. Immediately they responded. Immediately they walked down to the Troas to get on the boat. Immediately. Guess what happened? When you and I obeyed God immediately, God moved in. Amen? God moves in. When we are trying to do it on our own energy and strength, nothing's going to open automatically. But when we respond to God faithfully and immediately we responded, God cooperates with us. How do you know? Take a look at verse 11. We boarded a boat at Troas and sailed straight across to the island at Samothrace. And the next day we landed at Neapolis. Neapolis is the harbor, another side of the ocean, the harbor, the entering into Greece. So it took one single day. Wow. That's about 150 miles. If you are a good student of the Bible, you will see that in chapter 20, verse 6, Paul was traveling the same distance, but it took 5 days. Whoa! It took 5 days another time, but this time it took only one single day. that Paul and his missionary companion could travel over the ocean. They arrived in Samothrace, in Neapolis, the harbor. Wow. When we respond to God immediately, God helps us along. Are you going to wait for another time? That means you miss God's chance. When Paul and his companions responded faithfully, God helped them along. God provided perfect weather. Wow, their voyage was very successful. Why? They made it in a single day. Take a look at verse 12. From there, we reached Philippi. Philippi is the city like about 10 miles inside of Greece. So they arrived in the harbor, the Neapolis, and they walked about 10 miles into the city named Philippi, a major city of that district of Macedonia and a Roman colony, a very significant city in the location as well. And interesting thing happens. Take a look at verse 12, the last sentence. And we stayed there several days. Now you have to raise a question, why? Wait a minute. God, one time you showed me a dream, you showed me a vision in that the Macedonian man was waving hands and saying, come on over, help us, help us. That's why we immediately, obeyed your word and all the way down to the port, and we got on the boat and we made one single day and we arrived in the Philippi. Nothing happened. Wait a minute, Paul. Once you crossed over the ocean and landed there, you got to do God's work immediately. Didn't you want to share the gospel to the people here? Then you got to do something about it. How come you're not doing anything? Paul and his companions arrived there, but nothing happened. He stayed there several days. Sometimes God teaches us to wait, which means we have to be keen to his schedule, not ours. Sometimes we get easily agitated because of the time that, how come God is not moving? Maybe I should do it. God, since you're not moving so fast, maybe let me help you. Guess what happens when we do? We beget Ishmaels. You remember that? Abraham, he couldn't wait. God, you promised me that my offspring will be my inheritance. Well, how come you're doing anything? I've got no heir. Let me help you, God. So when Abraham tried to help God, guess what happened? Ishmael was born. There goes the headache. Sometimes we have to listen and we have to wait. Waiting is the toughest thing. Do you know how we could judge this person is secure and mature in faith? Go and check him whether he could wait. See him whether he could wait in this conflict. When you see him wait until his move, then he is secure and he's mature. Well, most of us, including me, sometimes we hate to wait. We got to move on. I got to do something. Sure, I've got, right? That's not what Paul shows. Why? He was sensitive to his God's voice. In Texas, in Dallas, when I lived, there were a lot of funny things happen. Sometimes I drive on the highway or driving in Greenville Avenue. Guys like honking because the car in front of him was not driving fast enough. And guess what happened? The guy lowered down the window and pulled out the gun and poof, 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 like that. That happens in Dallas. Houston, same way, right? Yeah. Most of them carry at least 3 or 4 guns in the car. It's a crazy thing. That's probably why I purchased my handgun as soon as I arrived in Dallas. Funny thing. And then I got about 1,000 ammos, and during the midterm exam, final exam, when the class is over, then all the seminary students go out to the outdoor shooting range and shoot. Wow, stress 풀렸다, something like that. We do all the crazy things. In Dallas, did you know that dogs go to college? You can Google it. There are 3 universities that only dogs are allowed to go. K-9 universities. 3 locations, Garland, and another one is in Mesquite. And man, it's a funny thing. Dogs go to college there. And they got graduation ceremony too. I happened to be in the training center, and that day, was a graduation day. The dogs past several months, they've been trained very seriously for the K-9 service. And the dogs lined up in front of all the audience. I was curious. This is graduation. The K-9 unit, all the dogs, they've been trained very different courses, and this is the graduation day ceremony. Can you imagine what the final exam was? The trainer, was holding the leash behind the dog, and the door in front of the hallway was opened very slowly, and another trainer popped out of the door, and he was carrying 2 buckets, and I couldn't guess what he was carrying. But dogs, with a very keen sense of smelling, they knew exactly what was inside the bucket. Meat, juicy steaks. So at the signal, the trainer threw the meat from the bucket right in front of the dogs. He was throwing the meat, all the juicy, juicy, okay? So you could see juicy, just dripping up. Whew, whew. Filet mignon, okay? Steak, whew. T-bone steak, whew. All these meats kind of flying in the air, and the dogs were going crazy already, okay? Adrenaline is popping up, and they were dying and crazy and jumping and barking, and most of the dogs, they were crazy. Why? Because the meat just touched the ground only about just a couple of feet in front of them. They can reach it, eat it. But only few dogs who've been trained well were not moving at all. I was shocked. The dogs were not looking at the meat. These well-trained dogs turn around and look at their trainers and say, okay, I see the problem. What do you want me to do? They were not even moving at all. All these dogs just moving their, the wagging, okay? The wiggling their wigs. And they're just looking at the trainer and say, what do you want me to do? I got a problem here. Wow, only those 3 or 4 dogs graduated that day. Why? They learned to wait. All the other flunked. All of you as well. Sometimes we really have to learn how to listen, how to wait for His signal. Sometimes we just bark at the wrong signal. We just rush out the wrong signal. Paul, knowing what kind of God is guiding him all these years through, he waited. Common sense. Paul, you got to move on. Come on, God showed you vision. God gave you perfect weather. You arrived in a single day, and you got to move on. What are you doing? You wasted time. No. It's not. The question is, how close are you with God? How deep is your fellowship with God? Can you recognize that God says, wait? That's the way how we should fulfill God's vision. God's vision can fulfill only by immediate response, immediate obedience. Only by wait. Unless God gives you full yes sign, you have to wait there. The question, what are you going to do while you're waiting? Wasting your time, Googling, web surfing, enjoying, playing games, or sleeping, or do whatever you want to do? No. God did not give us life so that we can enjoy our own lives. No. God gave us life so that we could glorify Him. We have a vision. Now, take a look at verse 13. On the Sabbath, we went a little way outside the city to a riverbank where we thought people would be meeting for prayer. And we sat down to speak with some women who had gathered there. Do you know how we can fulfill God's vision? Sometimes we have to break our own routine. As long as we are keeping on our own routine, we cannot fulfill God's vision. Why? God is so creative. God hates to do the replay, okay? Sometimes God answers this way. please don't expect that he would answer exactly the same way that for the second one. No. He is God of creation. Why don't you take a look at the person sitting right next to you? Is there anyone who looks just exactly like you? Turn around. I'm just saying, turn around. Look at Jay. Okay? Turn around. Is there anyone who looks just like you? No. God of creation. God of creativity. When Paul and his companion arrived in Philippi, his routine was what? Every single mission trip, every single time that he visited the city, what happened? What would normally do first time? He visited what? Synagogue. There, no synagogue. Oh my goodness. There's no synagogue in Philippi. Then how can he preach? God, I always preached to the Jewish people and the pagan, the Gentile proselytes in the synagogue because they were somehow exposed to the scriptures and it was easy for me to share the gospel based on the Old Testament, but there's no synagogue. Oh, my, what are we going to do? Sometimes we have to break our own routine. Paul, knowing that there is no synagogue in the city of Philippi, he went outside of the city, the riverbank. That he assumed that people would gather together so that they could worship God there. So he went out. He had to break his own routine. Please do not put a high fence around you saying, God, this is my comfort zone. I'm used to this. This is a familiar area, and somehow if you ask me to go cross over this fence, I'm not going to move my feet. No. By doing that, God's vision cannot be fulfilled. Sometimes we have to break our own comfort zone. We have to tear down our routine. Paul, knowing that God is the God of creativity, he had to break his own routine. So he went out to the riverbank, first time ever in a mission trip. There, he met a group of women. Take a look at the second half of verse 13. We sat down to speak with some women who had gathered there. One of them was Lydia from Thyatira, a merchant of expensive purple cloth, who worshiped God. Surprise. How can we fulfill God's vision? God-given vision can only be fulfilled when we attend to a seemingly insignificant. Sometimes we ignore things insignificant because we want something big, something fancy, shiny. But here, he was looking for a group of Jewish men. But since there were not even 10 Jewish men, they couldn't have synagogue. So he was looking for a group of people, whatever, probably like a riverbank, and worshiping God. So he went there, spotted them, a group of people, Gentile, not even men, Gentile women. What is this? God, I remember vividly that in the vision that God gave you several days ago, there was a man. Macedonian man was in my dream, God. But there's no man here. What's going on, God? You know what? Seemingly insignificant. But when we attend to things seemingly insignificant, then God fulfill His vision through us. Please don't ignore just because it seems so insignificant. No. Paul didn't know, but he preached anyway. Alas, God opened one of the women, Lydia. She responded. Oh my goodness, she responded. Even though I saw a man waving at me in my dream, but there's a woman, Gentile woman. 2,000 years ago, women, not so significant. Children, women, they're not even included in the census. Women, Gentile woman, God opened a lady named Lydia. If we take a look at the last verse of chapter 16, you will see what happened through Lydia. Verse 40, when Paul and Silas left the prison, they returned to the home of Lydia. There, they met with the believers and encouraged them once more. Then they left town. Do you know what happened when Paul preached the gospel in the riverbank? That was the day that God had dreamed for many, many years the first church of Europe to be born. The church in Philippi became the first church in Europe in church history. Through whom? Lydia. Small lady. Insignificant. Not even men. Not even group of men. But small thing, through small things, God can do great things. Please focus on His vision. When He shows you His vision, respond immediately. Sometimes, yes, we have to wait. Sometimes you have to break your own routine, but please don't forget. Do not overlook things seemingly insignificant. Why? God can do great things out of nothing. How can you fulfill God's vision? When you are sensitive to His direction. God is talking to you. God probably has been talking to you. I want you to do this and do that for me. And sometimes God stops you. And you think, God, what's happening? But whether you are persistently pursuing His vision in you, then next chapter will be open. If we somehow got frustrated and say, I'm not going to do it. Why? It stopped. God showed me somehow, and then got stopped all of a sudden. I'm not going to do anything. Then nothing's going to happen. Like about 10 years ago, 2007 actually, in October, I organized a group of people from my ministry in Seoul, about 20-some group of church members, mixed with British, Australian, and Korean American, Afro-American. So like about 20 people from English ministry, and we went to Hokkaido. Because that year we planned a church rally from Korean side for the Japanese people in Sapporo, Hokkaido. So I grouped about 20 people from my ministry, and we decided to do vacation Bible school for the children of the missionaries there. Because we were informed that the missionaries working out in the Japanese community, the kids going to international school, and they haven't had vacation Bible school for many years. So they requested us to host a vacation Bible school. So we planned, and then we had one day to spare before the vacation Bible school actually started. So we decided to visit the campus, the Hokkaido National University. Like about 6 or 7 months prior in Seoul, I happened to be the keynote speaker for a conference for Korean and Japanese and Chinese medical doctors in Yonsei Severance Hospital. So I was the speaker, so I preached, and I get to know a lot of doctors there. And there I happened to meet the chaplain of the Hokkaido National University. So I told him, wow, you are the chaplain there? Yeah, I am the chaplain, so and so and so. Wow, I'm so excited. You know what? 6 months later, we plan to visit, Hokkaido, and we're going to do the vacation Bible school. Can we visit your campus? And he said, yeah, go ahead. So ever since, we just exchanged the emails and even phone numbers and everything. So I contacted him every now and then, and knowing them, and informed him that we will be arriving on a certain day. So that day, we decided to visit the campus. So we took a train, and we arrived, and we, departed from our own, the host place. And when we arrived at the station, Hokkaido University Station, 3 Korean missionaries approached us, Japanese, Korean. And they were like a little bit curious. Why? Because a group of 20 people, all different, ethnic groups, got off from the train, looking around, which direction, So they approached me, you guys looking for something? So yeah, we're going to the Hokkaido National University. Oh yeah, go this direction. Oh, by the way, why are you going there? Oh, no, we're going to have some campus ministry. And he was saying, what? Campus ministry? How come? Oh yeah, long story short, I told him that I happen to know the chaplain there. And then this guy said, oh, I'm sorry to tell you this, but did you know that chaplain is not a Christian? He's an atheist. I was like, what? He's a chaplain. Oh, he's an atheist. I was like, oh, that's great. So anyway, we decided to go to the campus anyway, so we walked like about 15 minutes, and we arrived at the campus, and the chaplain was waiting for us at the entrance of the chapel. We attended. That day was October 31st, Halloween. All the Japanese college students, they were wearing like weird costumes and mustache and like feathers everywhere. Girls like kind of angel, like a witchy face, and it was weird. And the service was over. The chaplain invited us into our reception area, and he prepared like a little sandwich for everyone. The funny thing is, the chaplain, since he was not a Christian, he did not want us to be involved with any type of evangelism with the Japanese students or whatever. Why? He's not a believer. He wanted to stop us. And he said, well, you guys, you know what, I mean, let's go upstairs and have lunch together, and then you got to go to the train station. So let's go up, let's go. He was pushing us. He wanted to separate us from the Japanese students. So we said, no. We'd like to hang out with Japanese students a little bit more. And then with that, how about inviting them over? Oh, I mean, we can share our lunch. So he was like, oh, we prepare only 20 sandwich. No, it's okay, we can share them. So we invited Japanese students into the second floor, and we sat all together around the table. And they were waiting for my signal. So I just looked around. In a perfect time, I said, let's do it. They pulled out guns. No. They pulled out 4 spiritual laws. Do you remember little stack? Okay, 4 spiritual laws. And there they shared the gospel with Japanese students. It's too late. Chaplains couldn't do anything. We shared the gospel. 7 students accepted Christ Jesus that day. We were so excited. The chaplain, so angry. So after that, he rushed us out. Okay. Oh wow, you might lose. You won't lose your what? The train. Go ahead. You got to go catch it. Go. You guys late. So reluctantly, we set out the place. As we were about to go into the station, there were 2 Japanese girls waiting for us, in tears in their eyes. And we didn't know what's happening. What's going on? We heard that you guys from Korea, to evangelize here, you attended our chapel. Did you know this school started as a mission school? A very strong Christian doctor from Amherst, Massachusetts, William Clark, very famous chemistry, the scholar here, came over to Japan, and he founded this school as a mission school. We had a very strong professors in the beginning, and we had a very wonderful worship services in the chapel every single day. But now, nobody. We are only 2 Christians on campus. Can you please lead a prayer meeting here on this campus before you leave? We were so moved. We looked at the clock, it's kind of late. But anyway, we sat down on the grass, and we had worship service and praise and prayer meeting. And after that, knowing that we didn't have much time left, so we began to run. The worst marathon ever I had, to the train station. All my sisters, right? They just took off their sandals, they began to run. They couldn't even stop. Why? Because we got to go and catch the train. We arrived at the train station 1 minute late already. In Korea or even Japan, the train leaves on time, right? Sharp, train leaves on time. We arrived there 1 minute late, J.R., okay, Japanese railroad, J.R., took off 1 minute ago, we assumed. We're like, we ran like about 10 minutes like crazy, and oh my goodness, we lost the train. God has got a surprise. Out of nowhere, we began to hear rumbling sound of the train. Train was that specific day. The JR, the Japanese railroad train, was late 1 minute 30 seconds. we still had 30 seconds. When we catch our breath, we were able to get on the train. The question is, are you going to give up just because of your frustration? Are you going to give up because there's nothing? Everything's all closed up? No, it's not. Expect His surprises. Then God's going to move into your every single move and He'll do His work. May the Lord bless you. Let's pray, shall we? Heavenly